Okay, let's dive right into this. In June 2026, right after the historic initial public offering of SpaceX, Elon Musk officially became the world's first trillionaire. I mean, it is a jaw-dropping milestone that literally rewrites financial history. But how did a self-described introverted kid from South Africa actually pull this off? Today, we're breaking down his exact blueprint. We'll be drawing on strategic analyses, biographies, and financial reports to extract the core lessons behind this unprecedented success for this explainer. So $1.1 trillion. This number is almost impossible to wrap your head around. Following that 2026 SpaceX IPO, which gave the aerospace company a valuation of $1.77 trillion, Musk's personal net worth skyrocketed to an estimated $1.1 trillion. To put that into perspective for a second, he's now worth more than the entire gross domestic product of Nigeria, South Africa, and Kenya combined. The gap between him and the second richest person in the world isn't really a gap anymore. It's an $810 billion canyon.
But, to really understand this blueprint, we have to look at the stark contrast. Back in 2008, Musk definitely wasn't riding high. He was at his absolute lowest financial point, right in the middle of the global financial crisis. Both Tesla and SpaceX were literally days away from bankruptcy. SpaceX's first 3 rockets had exploded, and Tesla was just burning cash it didn't have. So what did he do? Musk took his very last $20 million and split it right down the middle to keep both companies on life support. 18 years later, that bet turned into $1.1 trillion. That kind of trajectory absolutely requires a highly replicable, deeply strategic blueprint.
Here's our roadmap for today. We're going to deconstruct this through 5 key lessons. First, the trillion-dollar blueprint itself. Second, first principles in vertical control. Third, the all-in risk architecture. Fourth, purpose and radical resilience. And finally, the impact of extreme wealth. Let's move to and see how this builds with Section 1, the trillion-dollar blueprint. Because obviously, you don't just start out building rockets. You start out sleeping under your desk. So Musk arrived in Canada with just $2,000 in his pocket. By 1995, he and his brother launched Zip2, an early digital city guide. But here's the crucial lesson. Their burn rate was ridiculously tiny. They practically lived in the office, slept on futons, and showered at the local YMCA. They even shared a single computer. Musk would code at night and run the server during the day. That extreme frugality paid off with a $307 million acquisition, netting him $22 million. And he rolled that directly into X.com, which, as we know, became PayPal, netting him $180 million in 2002. At 31 years old, he could have retired 10 times over. Instead, he took that massive payout, founded SpaceX in 2002, and led the Series A funding for Tesla in 2004. He was building this empire stone by stone. Moving on to Section 2, first principles and vertical control. This brings us to the core strategies that completely distance him from legacy competitors. How does he actually tackle these seemingly impossible industries? So the crucial point is that his entire approach relies heavily on first principles thinking. You might know Musk actually enrolled at Stanford for a PhD in applied physics, but left after just 2 days to join the internet boom. But that physics framework, it never left him. First principles thinking means you don't just look at how things have always been done. You reduce a problem to its absolute most fundamental truths, and then you build up from there. When aerospace experts said a private company couldn't build cheap rockets, Musk looked at the raw material cost of aerospace-grade aluminum, titanium, and carbon fiber. He realized the materials themselves were cheap. It was the traditional manufacturing process that was expensive. So he just rebuilt the process from scratch. We see this applied perfectly through extreme vertical integration, especially over at Tesla. Instead of outsourcing parts like traditional automakers do, Tesla controls the entire stack. They develop their own battery production. They write their own software in-house. They even eliminated the traditional dealership model entirely to handle direct sales to the consumer. This vertical control ensures they dictate the pace of innovation, they maintain the quality, and they drastically reduce long-term costs. It's a massive upfront investment, sure, but it creates an unshakable foundation. Which leads us right into Section 3, the all-in risk architecture. Because controlling the entire vertical stack means taking on enormous, almost unthinkable levels of risk. His risk architecture is completely 100% all in. While most entrepreneurs try to build a safety net, Musk repeatedly just burns the boats. From showering at the YMCA back in the Zip2 days to literally watching the first 3 SpaceX rockets explode. Keep in mind, each of those failures cost millions of dollars and months of grueling work. And then there's that 2008 crisis we talked about. Just imagine holding your last $20 million. Most advisors would absolutely tell you to save one company and let the other die, or just walk away entirely to preserve your wealth. He bet it all to save both. His tolerance for both financial and technological risk is arguably his biggest competitive advantage. He embraces rapid iteration even when failure is highly likely and incredibly expensive. Section 4. Purpose and radical resilience. You simply cannot maintain that level of constant risk without a profound, almost radical level of personal resilience. Musk's human journey is filled with some really intense trials. As a quiet, bookish kid in South Africa, he was severely bullied, once beaten so badly he was actually thrown down a flight of stairs and blacked out. Later on, he was ousted as CEO of PayPal by his own colleagues, the famous PayPal Mafia, while he was away on his honeymoon. Shortly after that, he contracted a near-fatal strain of falciparum malaria that brought him just hours away from death. And professionally, he navigated what he famously called production hell at Tesla, literally sleeping on the factory floor to fix bottlenecks. His ability to absorb immense physical and psychological pain is intrinsically linked to his grand, long-term purpose, transitioning the world to sustainable energy and making humanity a multiplanetary species. And this brilliantly illustrates his mindset. Musk once summarized it perfectly, saying, "My mentality is that of a samurai. I would rather commit seppuku than fail." When you're trying to colonize Mars or entirely upend the global automotive industry, a normal work ethic simply doesn't cut it. It requires a zealous, unbreakable commitment to the mission, prioritizing the end goal way above personal comfort and, honestly, way above conventional corporate management styles. Section 5. The impact of extreme wealth. The culmination of this blueprint, reaching a $1.1 trillion net worth, has sparked intense global debate. So let's look at the data objectively. Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer scale. It's staggering. The second richest person, Larry Page, sits at $290 billion. Musk's wealth is now over 3 times that amount. Even more eye-opening, as reported by Business Day, Musk's fortune is equivalent to roughly 72% of all the tax revenue collected by the entire nation of South Africa since 1997. This unprecedented concentration of resources in the hands of a single private citizen has, as you'd expect, raised some significant questions regarding global economic structures. Statistics from anti-poverty organizations like Oxfam paint a stark picture of this inequality. Musk's $1.1 trillion wealth actually exceeds the combined wealth of the poorest 46% of the world's entire population. That is roughly 3.8 billion people. Furthermore, Oxfam estimates that a 10% tax on this fortune, which would be $110 billion, could theoretically end global extreme poverty for an entire year. For observers worldwide, this trillionaire milestone is a very complex intersection. On one hand, it represents the absolute pinnacle of technological innovation and entrepreneurial success. But on the other, it serves as a stark symbol of a global economy where wealth is increasingly concentrated. So we've unpacked the timeline, the first principles framework, the all-in risk, the radical resilience, and the global impact of Elon Musk's trillion-dollar blueprint. The question I want to leave you with today is this. Knowing the immense risks required to literally reshape the world, how will you apply first principles to the biggest obstacles in your own life? Thank you so much for joining me. If you found this breakdown valuable, be sure to share it and subscribe to The Explainer for more deep dives into the topics shaping our world.